Sup, you beautiful bastards. Hope you've had a fantastic Wednesday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing I wanted to talk about today, it's quickie entertainment news, but also at the same time makes me feel like we're living in the end times. The cast for the upcoming season of Dancing with the Stars was announced, and among the people named, you've got people like Nelly, Charles Oakley, Monica Aldama from Cheer, Catfish's Nev Schulman, Disney Channel actress Sky Jackson, others, and then the big standout, I think, for most people is Carole Baskin. Of course, best known from the docuseries Tiger King, the sworn enemy and arch nemesis of Joe Exotic, who's currently serving out a 22-year sentence for a murder-for-hire plot against Baskin, as well as allegations and a widespread belief that she may have fed her former husband to a tiger. And, following this announcement, there was a big reaction, a diverse reaction, including some outrage, and for me personally, it's just strange and weird, and with everything that's happened over the past year especially, but several years, it feels like we're all living in a simulation, and whoever has control of the slider for believability just went nah. But that said, I want to pass the question off to you cool cats and kittens. What are your thoughts on this? I don't even know what life is anymore. Then, in other entertainment news, we should talk about theaters reopening, with AMC making the massive announcement that they would have 70% of their theaters opened this weekend in time for audiences to see Christopher Nolan's Tenet. This is the continuation of what we've been seeing them do over the past several weeks. Reopening theaters at limited capacity. As of this weekend, it will be 420 theaters open. This notably including their first theaters in California to reopen, as 7 theaters in San Diego will be open on Friday. So far, AMC says that things have gone smoothly, with the CEO and president of AMC Theaters saying in a statement, "The first 2 weekends of operations have exceeded our expectations in terms of guests returning to the movies and in terms of their feedback about our extensive AMC Safe and Clean policies and procedures." And seemingly as a result of AMC announcing that more theaters will be open Labor Day weekend, we saw their stock jump, hitting its highest level since February. And as far as how this weekend will go, it'll probably be good. Tenet is the obvious big pull here, and so far it's done good numbers. While not released in the States yet, we saw it popping up internationally, where it reportedly made $53 million in its first weekend, which is a standout number considering everything that's going on that led analysts to anticipate that the film would only bring in around $40 million. With all that said, the thing that I really wonder, and I don't know if we'll actually get an answer to, is what option will play out the best. And what I'm talking about there is you have Tenet, of course, releasing in theaters, and at the same time, right, the same weekend, you have Mulan being released as a VOD premium on Disney+. Right, that requires a Disney+ subscription, and the VOD purchase is $30. Right, so there's the question of which move will prove to be smarter. Though, like I mentioned earlier, there is a possibility we won't be able to make that comparison. That because Disney Plus doesn't have to release those numbers. So actually, with this story, I want to pass the question off to you. Are you going to see either of these movies? Both of them? Just one? Neither? Why? Why not? Let me know in those comments down below. And then let's talk about the censorship of Joe Rogan. I saw a lot of people talking about this. So if you didn't know, on Tuesday, Joe Rogan's podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, finally debuted on Spotify. This is part of his exclusive deal with the platform, a deal reportedly worth more than $100 million. But that debut was met with a ton of frustration after fans noticed that dozens of episodes appear to be missing. Right, and this was a bit confusing since Rogan had previously said that his entire library of podcasts would be available starting September 1st before becoming fully exclusive to Spotify by the end of the year. And so yesterday we see several news outlets and many listeners claiming that the missing episodes appear to be some of his most controversial interviews with far-right figures. People like Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, with other excluded episodes including non-political figures like comedians Chris D'Elia and Joey Diaz, who have both recently come under fire. So very quickly you had people calling this censorship, wondering if this was Spotify's choice or Rogan's. And there was a lot of frustration and anger around this because Rogan is known for talking to people from all across the political spectrum. And when he first announced the deal, he noted that the show would not change. Writing on Instagram at the time, "It's just a licensing deal, so Spotify won't have any creative control over the show. They want me to just continue doing it the way I'm doing it right now," and adding in his announcement,
"It will be the exact same show. I'm not going to be an employee of Spotify. We're going to be working with the same crew, doing the exact same show. The only difference will be it will now be available on the largest audio platform in the world."
But also, at the same time, you had a number of fans hesitating to call it censorship. Right? Some noting that it was just the first day. Joe Rogan's catalog is massive. People also pointing out that there were missing episodes featuring people like Tommy Chung and Nick Kroll. Right? People who, if their episode was cut out, it doesn't really fit the narrative of censorship. But now some of the updates that we're seeing appear to argue that that is not the case. And this information actually coming from Alex Jones, Jones, offering an explanation on his site saying they've got 1,500 plus files and then some migrating over. They've had a few problems here and there with corrupted files, with the naming of them, and adding Spotify wants to have a first rollout and then a second rollout. Also saying that Rogan's favorite 100 episodes of the last 10 years or so will be left on YouTube starting December 31st, claiming that's why his interview and others are not there, saying it's because those are going to be the exclusive interviews that are left on YouTube, where, in Joe's words, they'll probably get more views than if they were on Spotify. Also saying he asked Rogan point blank if Spotify was censoring him, and he said absolutely not. And actually, since the initial concern, the original stories have come out, it appears that a number of episodes have actually popped up on Spotify. Yeah, ultimately that's where we are right now. It appears that kind of this is a story that caught on fire because of assumptions, though I will say whenever it comes to a massive company or a massive deal like this, there is reason to be skeptical of what's actually happening behind the scenes. On that note, what do you believe here? Is this just a transfer, delay, glitch situation? Or do you think that this is something worth more skepticism? Why not? Let me know. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and Today in Awesome brought to you by Keeps. If you didn't know, 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time that they're 35. Right? Everyone's got that brother, uncle, even that friend, and if you don't want to go down that road, you don't have to just sit idly by. Keeps helps you stop hair loss before it's too late with their scientific and affordable approach to treatments that are up to 90% effective at reducing and stopping further hair loss. And Keeps offers generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products that are out there, so some of you may have in fact already tried them before, but probably never at this price. Also, you used to have to go to your doctor's office for your prescription, but with Keeps, you can get these products delivered directly to your home, which fantastically, for a limited time, you beautiful bastards can get your order for 50% off. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/DeFranco, or just click that link in the description down below to receive 50% off your first order. And the first bit of awesome today is that David Blaine did not die. If you didn't see, this morning YouTube launched their new original, Are We About to Watch David Blaine Die, on a live stream, or I guess as some people called it, David Blaine Ascension, where in a live stream he went around 25,000 feet in the air thanks to helium balloons, then disconnecting and making his way to the ground, and like I said, he didn't die. Which I will say, I always wonder what percentage of the audience that tunes in to, the kind of live daredevil stunts, what percentage of the audience watches because they're like, wow, look at this amazing human feat, and then how many are like, is he gonna go splat? I don't know, there was that. But also, one of my favorite videos today, someone sent it to me this morning, it just gave me 2 minutes of pure joy. It is a man at a council meeting and he wants change, but I'm not gonna tell you what it's about because I want you to watch it after this video. It makes me very happy and I stand with him. And if you wanna see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about evictions, a very terrifying word and prospect for millions of Americans right now. But actually, some good news here. Yesterday, the Trump administration announced an order that will ban evictions for millions of Americans through the end of the year. And this is incredibly significant because it is by far the most sweeping action this administration has taken to protect people who have lost their jobs or taken other financial hits during the pandemic from losing their homes if they cannot pay rent. The order, which is being enacted by the CDC, aims to prevent the additional spread of the coronavirus that mass evictions could create by leaving renters homeless. Or most likely, those people would be forced into homeless shelters, shared housing, other crowded living spaces. And under the order, any renter who expects to make no more than $99,000 this year, or $198,000 for married couples, or anyone who received a stimulus check under the CARES Act cannot be evicted for failing to pay rent on time. Though, just in case before you do something crazy or stupid, you can be evicted for other reasons. Things like criminal behavior or property damage. Also, the order says that any landlord who does evict someone for not paying rent can face criminal penalties, including fines and jail time. Additionally, it requires everyone covered under this who is facing eviction to fill out a declaration agreeing to a number of things under sworn testimony. In addition to acknowledging that they meet the income threshold, the declaration also requires all renters to certify that they have used best efforts to obtain all available government assistance for rent or housing, that they are unable to make full payments due to loss of household income or wages, layoffs, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses, that they are using best efforts to make timely partial payments as close to the full amount as they can afford, and that if evicted, they would likely become homeless, need to move into a homeless shelter, or need to move into a new residence shared by other people who live in close quarters because I have no other available housing options. And then finally, most notably, and please understand this because I've seen a lot of people misunderstand this part, under this declaration, renters must agree that they understand that once the eviction ban ends on December 31st, their landlord can require them to pay the full amount of money owed, not just the next month. Like most, if not all, of the federal and state level eviction bans, this is not a freeze on how much you owe. It is not an erasure of rent owed. This is a temporary ban on evictions for not being able to pay rent. And so after December 31st, if your landlord asks for all the money that has not been paid, you can then be evicted, right? That is not a new thing. thing that is standard, but like I said, this ban is also a lot more expansive than everything we've seen in the past. We saw an earlier ban back in March as part of the $2 trillion CARES Act, but notably that ban only applied to renters who were residents of buildings and homes with federal mortgages, meaning that it only applied to around 1 out of every 4 renters, and because that ban was not based on income, a lot of people were not covered. Though, of course, it did still help millions of Americans, but that moratorium expired at the end of July. So in an attempt to prevent a massive evictions crisis, the House both extended the moratorium and expanded it to all tenants as part of the $3 trillion coronavirus relief bill that it passed back in May. But as we talked about before, that ended up not becoming a law because we saw Senate Republicans broadly rejecting that legislation. And then when those Senate Republicans proposed their own bill back in July, it didn't include any plans to extend the evictions ban. And unfortunately, the negotiations for another coronavirus relief bill has just been a shit show. Now, a thing to note here, especially if you are a renter, you should look into your situation because some states have implemented their own eviction bans that actually cover more renters than the federal ban does. But also, many of the protections that we've seen have started to expire, and according to reports, right now only 17 states and DC still have those safeguards, which was pretty horrifying because you had experts predicting that if nothing else was done, you had 30 to 40 million renters who were at risk of being evicted in the coming months. Which is also why we saw Donald Trump announcing at the beginning of last month a series of executive actions aimed at helping Americans economically. And among those actions was an executive order that Trump said would not only expand the moratorium, but give more financial assistance to renters. But that order didn't actually do either of those things. In reality, it just called on the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services and the Director of CDC to consider whether an eviction ban is needed. And it called for the Treasury and HUD secretaries to see if they can find any more funds, but it doesn't promise any more money, right? Which is why at the time you had a lot of people criticizing Trump for misrepresenting the executive order and also for not doing enough for renters. But now, with this new order, you have a lot of people praising him and his administration for putting such widespread safeguards in place to protect renters. Though there are also those concerned that it actually falls short in one key place, providing additional aid to renters. Like we said before, renters will still have to pay the full rent at some point. And the order even explicitly allows landlords to charge fees, penalties, or interest as a result of the failure to pay rent or other housing payment on a timely basis. But it doesn't do anything to help the people that will ultimately have to pay the rent. And so that's why we're also seeing people that are very torn, right? Happy that millions of Americans will not be pushed out of their homes right now, but also very concerned that this is just kind of kicking the can down the road, that there's this ever-growing deeper hole that millions of Americans will fail to get out of, and it just happens to be several weeks after Election Day. But also, in addition to the concerns from renters, you have landlords concerned, right? Landlords still have to pay mortgages, and while there are some protections for federally backed mortgages, many landlords have only been able to get help if there are state-level safeguards in place where they live. But Trump's order does nothing to help landlords over these next 4 months. And as CNBC pointed out, small mom-and-pop landlords make up the majority of single-family rental homeowners. Close to 23 million units and 17 million properties are owned by individual investors, according to the most recent count by the US Census Bureau. If they don't have rental income, or to interject for a second, any sort of government relief, they can't pay their mortgages, taxes, and the insurance on the home. That could trickle into the broader health of the housing market, with the chairman of the National Association of Home Builders adding, without sufficient rental income, a number of properties would be pushed into foreclosure. Congress must act now to assist renters and property owners. But yeah, ultimately, that is where we are right now. If we summarized everything, it seems like temporary and much needed relief, but still potentially long-term problems with a line in the sand on December 31st. And so with this story, I would love to know your thoughts and also your experiences. Are you a landlord? Are you a renter? What are your thoughts on this move? What have you been going through? And as we get closer and closer day by day to December 31st, what do you think happens to you then? Right, if you're not able to pay now, do you think you will have bounced back by then? And that is where I'm going to end today's show. As always, thank you for being a part of these daily dives into the news. Also, if you're new here, definitely join, hit that subscribe button, tap that bell to turn on notifications. And of course, remember, my name is Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.